Hello, I'm Rick Moore, editor of Whitecap Publication. I'm interviewing authoress Tawnya Torres in her new book, The Soul Keeper's Assistant. And it's really fabulous, and you have to read it to appreciate it, but it's available anywhere you get it now. So, Tawnya, you ready to be interviewed?
I'm ready.
All right. All right. I was kind of curious about give us a thumbnail sketch because there's a multiplicity of characters in this novel and they're very interesting. So give us a thumbnail sketch of the main characters in your new novel, if you would, The Soul Keeper's Assistant.
So I would say when I was writing the book that when I saw Ryan, I saw him as like a really young Leonardo DiCaprio.
Ooh,
I mostly like thought of him as like from the Basketball Diaries because in the book he's always playing basketball. So that was kind of the image that I had of like what he would look like. And Mia, she's like a 13-year-old Japanese girl with really long hair. It's so long that her stepdad is always kind of saying that he finds it kind of dirty or gross, but Ryan thinks it's very beautiful. And she has dystochiasis, which is the same genetic mutation that Elizabeth Taylor had, which results in like the double lash line, kind of has like a doll-like appearance.
all right. Yeah. Now, how about the other main characters in your book? Like the stepfather and the mother? How would
So
you?
Joseph, I feel like I switch back and forth between like these different actors of what he would look like. And at one point I thought he kind of would look like Jude Law, where he'd be like very handsome but kind of stiff. And then I forget his name, but it's like the actor for Homelander in The Boys. Like he's very, very mean. He's a very rude blonde guy. And I feel like that's who I see him as, is like this very mean but like handsome blonde man in his like 40s or 50s.
Wow. Do you have any other characters in the book that stand out to you?
Um,
Both
all of
of
them kind of stand out in like their own way, but I think one person that kind of stands out is Ayumi. He's one of the only nice boys, or one of the only boys that's nice to Mia, and it kind of describes like a lot of the boys that they go to school with have like dead shark eyes, like really dark eyes that don't reveal any emotion. But Ayumi has like these like really light hazel eyes, and it's kind of like what makes Ryan trust Ayumi to like kind of watch over her when he goes to high school and there's she's still at the middle school.
Okay. Now, which genre would you say that best described the Soul Keeper's Assistant? Because I find it kind of hard to say what category it fits best in.
You know, that's it's really hard because I think when you first start reading it, I think like almost the first half of the book is like a dark coming of age story.
Right.
Just like a lot of conflict in this like traumatic family system. Mean stepdad, really like subdued stepmom. And
Right.
then when the demon kind of makes an appearance, there's like a switch and it almost has more like like a speculative horror feel
Right.
to it. So I think that it's almost like you're deceived because you're reading the book and you're like, this is scary and creepy in its own way, but then we add like the speculative element. And of course there's like the romance. Like he wants to just be a good stepbrother, but he obviously really cares for Mia.
Would you say then it's a coming of age, dark horror, suspense novel, a romantic novel? So
Yeah.
about five different categories it fits in, right?
Yeah, I wasn't really trying to be super genre bendy with that story, but I felt like I had to
Yeah.
convey the message that I wanted to convey.
Yeah, you bend all the genres and blend them all together. It's really interesting. Now let's see. Let's deal with two of the minor characters in this multi-leveled story, right? Mia's mother, Korahu, and her stepfather, Joseph. Now, how exactly would you say they fit into this somewhat dark story? I understand Joseph, but I'm really having a hard time understanding how Korahu fits in the story, what role she plays in the story.
I think that she is kind of like she it definitely tries to be like the peacemaker in the home. Like at one point Ryan kind of notices that he and Koharu are being abused by Joseph, but that he ignores Mia. And so I feel like they work together almost like as a team to keep him away from her. That they know that if he's distracted by them, that he won't bother her. So I feel like she is like the stepmom, and the mom knows that it's like her job to protect the children in the only way that she knows that she can, which is pretty much like at one point Ryan says that like this woman is like my father's slave. Like she does all the housework, she quit her job, she does everything for this man, and like somehow it's never enough. And he's still always screaming at her. He describes like her tired eyes, like how she's very pretty, but that she looks tired and beat up all the time. Because like Ryan's father's just always wearing on her, just always screaming at her, just like a very chaotic character and
She's a
figure.
very
So she tries
person.
to be very peaceful.
Yeah, but she's got a darker side to her, doesn't she?
I think she's very sad, but doesn't really talk about it. Like I think that it's like in the way that he describes, like she always smells like cigarette smoke. He can tell that she's like drunk at 2 p.m., but she's trying to be nice. Like she's trying to like really be friendly to him and nice to her daughter. But I think that it's we see this sometimes in families, like, like there's like the stereotype of like the wine mom, moms that are always
Yep.
taking happy pills and already drunk before, 3 or 4 o'clock because they're very nice, but they're checked out, that they don't want to be there mentally anymore.
Stacy sublimates her feelings.
I think so.
Yeah, I thought that too. I mean, honestly, she's really an interesting character, though. I mean, it's expressed in various odd ways, like being nice to Joseph. I think is a bad reaction in a way, but another way, she's the peacekeeper in the family, right? She,
Yes, and at one point, I think that her and Ryan kind of have like a moment of like she didn't know that Joseph was going to be abusive. Ryan was, like 12 or 13 when they started dating. So who is he to tell her that
right.
this man is going to be abusive? And now it's 2 years into their relationship. It's like it's already happened and she feels foolish that she didn't see it. He feels bad that he didn't warn her. So it's almost like they're trauma bonded together because I think that they
Yes.
both want the best for Mia, but they're in this like horrible family situation. And of course, like since they have money and a nice house and nice cars, everyone thinks everything's perfect, hunky dory, super good. And
Yep.
Joseph is really like adamant about people thinking he's a nice guy. So he puts in like the minimal effort in the neighborhood or
Yep.
at work to be like, I'm this really nice guy. But no one really ever talks to him for more than 2 minutes. And Ryan says if you talk to him for more than 2 minutes, you realize what a jerk he is.
Well, the dynamics in this story are really intriguing. Honestly, they really are. But with regard to the story setting, which country are they in, and why is the locale so important to this novel to carrying it off?
So the story takes place. I leave it like unnamed, but it takes place in a big city in Japan. And the part of why it's so important is because Ryan, his father, and the demon that comes into the story later on, the Soul Keeper, they are the only white characters expressed in this story. And Ryan is always kind of pointing out his otherness, and that he'll see Japanese couples, and he's like, I wish that I could be accepted because everyone's saying I'm doing inappropriate, terrible things to my stepsister, but if I was Japanese, they probably wouldn't say that about me. So he really feels this otherness about himself.
It's odd because Mia feels that otherness outsider syndrome.
She does, like she looks, like everyone else, but she does not think like everyone else. She doesn't act like everyone else, and she gets bullied all the time because of it.
Well, they're both in their own way outsiders, aren't they? Yeah, I found that very that outsiderness has to bond them in the end, right?
Yeah.
They recognize it in each other. But all right, how is Ryan affected by the first incident with Mia? I'm thinking when she first confesses her feelings of inadequacy to Ryan. Now, he's feeling inadequate and outsiderness. And when she confesses her feelings to him of inadequacy, how does he react?
I think that it makes him kind of have like a reality check because he thinks that he just thinks that she's like so sweet and that she's so talented. Like he never really thought about art or poetry. And he's like, she's such a good painter. She's so like, obviously she's so much deeper than I am. She reads like these books I don't understand kind of thing. And so when she says that she doesn't feel like adequate, he kind of starts to question like, well, who am I and what do I have to offer? Like he talks about like kind of like living at like this surface level his whole life, and like Mia being so deep to him, saying that she doesn't feel adequate and she doesn't feel good enough. I think it just makes him really sad and question like his own like perspective on goodness. Like, is he good enough? Is he good enough for her? Like, why is he not good enough for his dad?
Right, right. And the Japanese setting is very um, telling for the whole story because Japan is a culture where the people don't typically talk about feelings?
You don't talk about feelings. Things are very strict. And actually, when I was doing research for the story, because I wanted it to be accurate to the
Well,
country, I was reading about how even though it's considered like a very safe country, like there's not a lot of violent crime compared to the United
right.
States, that the bullying is actually really traumatic. Like some of the stories that I read, like where like the bullying gets like so out of control and like
Oh,
suicide is like
geez.
a big thing in Japan from feelings of like inadequacy and like a like a culture that's not very accepting. So I kind of like really looked into that. And like when I thought about the bullying in America versus over there, it's
Well,
like it was just different. So I wanted to convey that.
but I don't think the Japanese dwell on suicide either. They just accept it and move
Yeah,
on.
like it's like it just happens. Like in America,
It's a big
when
deal.
it happens, it's a very big deal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, people go over the deep end about it. All right. Describe, if you will, the relationship between Mia's mother, Korahu, and Ryan. Again, this is a complex relationship and it's fascinating. For example, you already said that they bond together to protect Mia from her stepfather, right? But how does that make Korahu feel? I mean, honestly, it's got to be a continual source of irritation to her. I mean, she doesn't express it, but it's got to be continually irritating that she's always got to put herself in front of Mia to Joseph, right? And I think Ryan's the only person that has a glimmer. She has no one to turn to, right? She has no one to turn to with her feelings and everything like that. Ryan comes the closest to being a compatriot to her, right? But she doesn't talk that much to Ryan, does she?
No, she doesn't really. I feel like she doesn't really talk, but it's like he just kind of like he'll see her really tired folding laundry, and so he'll kind of like step up and be like, "I'll vacuum the living room and like do this stuff." And she's always like, "No, no, no, I got it. I got it." But he can tell that she's just obviously so run down and he really wants to help her. He also is like really worried that she is going to think that there's something inappropriate happening with him and Mia just because his father's always kind of making these gross and lewd comments about it. So I think that it's like he's not trying to suck up to her, but he kind of is. Like he's trying to be like, I really am like a nice guy and I'm not doing anything wrong. Like I really care that like even though our family's messed up, like I still want you to be okay. And I think that she kind of understands that.
Right. I mean, let's see. Yet it's a complex relationship because she doesn't express her feelings well. I mean, Ryan perceives her feelings, doesn't he? He sees that she's frustrated, she's tired, but the drinking is kind of an odd thing. I mean, honestly, she has to ameliorate her feelings by drinking. And that's got to tell Ryan that there's something seriously going on that's wrong between her his father and his wife. Yes.
Yes, and he can tell like just from like he'll talk about like doing homework in his room and he can just hear his dad just like screaming at her. But there's no like rebuttal that there's no Koharu's voice. He can just hear his father screaming, which means that she's just standing there and taking it and
Right.
never pushes back. And so I think that he understands that she's also like him where she's very powerless against like this man like she's quit her job. She's
Yep.
married to him. He supports this whole family. He's like a rich, lavish lawyer. Everyone thinks that like, oh, he is a real nice guy. He's a real good guy.
I know it's really odd, but it kind of stretches Mia to her breaking point, doesn't it?
I think it makes her very upset that her mother chose to marry a man so shortly after. She describes like very shortly in a like a paragraph like her father had died of cancer, and then her mother was lonely and sad and met Joseph, who seemed very charming at the time, but once he got his hooks in her, the real him came out, and it was too late.
How would you describe he got his hooks in her? I'm curious. Was it by being charming, and what else?
Well, Brian kind of has like this idea of his father just because of his experience with his mother leaving him when he was very young. And he was like, my mom was very beautiful. She wore heels all the time. She finally had all these fancy things that she felt like she was entitled to when she was with Joseph.
Right?
But it's like everything comes with a price, So I think that he's like one of those people that
Yeah, it
will
does.
buy you anything, take you anywhere. Kind of just like when it talks about Christmas time some of the gifts that he would give the girls, and it would
Oh,
make
yes,
Ryan really
yes.
uncomfortable. So I think that he's very much like flashy with the money and is like very like, I'm really charming and nice until he already knows that he's got you.
Behind closed doors, he's not so hot. Now, describe, if you will, Ryan's relationship to his father. How does his father treat him? I've already got the idea that he's a bad guy, but what are his father's primary motivations? Like, why does he do this? Why is he so mean to Ryan?
Well, I think that he's like a literal psychopath, so he likes that feeling of kind of like taking away people's like autonomy. So I think that he wants Ryan to also be like his like trophy son. That's like why Ryan gets nothing but good grades, plays basketball, is
Right?
like kind of even though he's like the outsider, he's still considered really popular at the school
Right?
and that he's doing, he does really good. And his father just only really cares about what he and his family look like. And it's like it's like I'm pretty sure Joseph is aware of his terrible behavior, but it
Right?
doesn't stop him. If anything, it makes it so that he just knows how to work everyone around him so he can continue to be bad without any like kind of backlash because no one's going to know how bad he really
Right.
is.
Do you think Joseph is frustrated that his son isn't cast in his mold? In other words, he's not like him.
I think that the way that he kind of badgers Ryan and is like very abusive verbally and physically, like Ryan talks about how his dad would just beat him up so relentlessly until Koharu and Mia moved in. That which is like very telling that it's like when no one else is around, he's just
Right.
awful. And I think in a way he wants to break Ryan mentally so that he will be awful. I think in a way he like wants like almost Ryan to be abusive and awful to Mia the way that he's abusive and awful to Koharu.
To be a duplicate of himself, right?
Yeah, like I think that it's like he does that because he wants that to happen between them, and that's why he makes these insinuations that the way that he loves Mia is wrong to kind of incite that
Right.
anger and that violence in him, and kind of put these weird seeds in his mind.
Right. 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 I expect in wanting Ryan to be like him, you're right. He's got to break him first because Ryan isn't like him. Doesn't have that tendency to be abusive to people either, right?
And I think that Ryan definitely has his own mental illness. Like I think that he would probably have like borderline personality disorder, but that doesn't make him a bad person. He's very
Right.
much like not in control of his emotions all the time and he dissociates and doesn't remember things a lot. But I don't think that he is mean-spirited the way that Joseph is.
Yeah. How would you explain Ryan's situation prior to meeting the demon? Because we got to set the stage somewhat for him meeting the demon. How would you describe his situation before meeting the demon?
So right before meeting the demon, things were already pretty bad with the family. And then
Right.
it goes an extra step where Ryan is woken up by Mia and they go downstairs and the house is completely trashed. All of Koharu's items are gone. Like he kind of already knew that something might happen with Koharu, but he's like, oh, she like tried to take her things and leave. But then he checks the garage and both the cars are gone. So that means that his dad is chasing after this woman. And Ryan kind of already knows like this man is not going to stop. And I don't think that Koharu is
Right.
going to stop either. So they've been abandoned and they're by themselves for a couple weeks and at that point like
Ryan.
Ryan's really losing hope that they're going to come back even though he doesn't want his dad to come back. He's like, well, how am I going to, there's all these bills. I don't want child services to take Mia away. Like he really doesn't want them to be separated, so he's like in a situation of like not really being able to hide that they don't have parents and money, but we have to go to school. So he's like trying to like kind of do the thing that the dad did where he's like, we have to make everything look really
Right.
good.
Make everything look perfect, right?
Hmm.
So that from an outside view, it'll be fine, right?
Yeah, like he describes like the neighbors never being close with them and that they don't even like question it. Like they not like no one he describes like kind of like people in the rich fancy neighborhood don't even pay attention. They don't even notice.
I guess that's true, actually. I mean, honestly. So Ryan was really in deep. He was right for the demon to appear to him, right?
Yeah, it was almost like I don't want to say that like it's like serendipitous because I don't think that you really want to find a demon, but in a way it's like he's thankful that this man kind of offers him a way out. And it's kind of funny because when I was writing Noboru's character, the Soul
Right?
Keeper, he actually appeared to me, and I heard him first. I heard his voice is the rapper G-Eazy. He has like a
Right.
very distinct voice, and he's very tall. I think that he's like 6'3" or something like that. And that's who I saw as like some when I'm writing, I don't always know what a character is going to look like. But that's who came to me as the Soul Keeper, and he's dressed like very like yeah, like a rapper would, like with like the like loose shirt and kind of like the cool sneakers, like lots of jewelry. And he's like, "Hey man," and he's smoking. He's like, "I can help you out." And at first Ryan is like, "Hell no." But then he realizes I don't really have another option though.
Right, right. He had no other way out, is what you're thinking, right? So, I mean,
Mhm.
honestly, yeah, I think that's really cool. Now, would you say this is more complex of the novels you've written? Because Silent Discovery was rich in layers, and Heart of the Machine was really rich in layers too. You outdid yourself in the Heart of the Machine. So, but Soul Keeper's Assistant came along. You took it a step further, right? For the dynamics of the family, because in the Silent Discovery, the mother was a mean person, she was abusive, but nothing like a Joseph in this book, The Soul Keeper's Assistant, right?
Mhm.
I mean, would you say you outdid yourself, or which of your novels do you favor for
I think I love them all
complexity?
for different reasons. But I would
Yes,
say, I guess
so
like a Silent Discovery and The Heart of the Machine, I think had very not like predictable because there's always like the twist, but it had a more like kind of like a storyline of like you kind of just know that these people are eventually going to find their way to each other and be in love. And
right.
there's like, kind of like the bittersweet happy ending. And with the Soul Keeper's Assistant, I think that that one it has I try to always have like a happy ending. It's very bittersweet, but I think the build up to the relationship, how they get there, the family dynamic, I think I really added like more layers of like just like kind of like that dark, complex feeling of discomfort.
Well, you've always
And
got tension in your stories, don't you? You build the tension, starts out slow and builds and builds and builds until you're finally thinking the situation is hopeless. And then you present
and
the,
then there's resolve.
yes, it's very
You have
real.
to hold out for that happy ending, you know?
You do. It's very realistic. And
And
I've
I
been,
think the Soul Keeper's Assistant, it does have a happy ending, but it takes so much to get there. And there are a lot more people I think involved, like kind of like Ryan's friends and stuff. And then
I know
the
it's
friends
not,
that he realizes that aren't his
yep.
friends. Like he goes through like I feel like just like every high schooler, it's like you think certain people are your friends, you realize that they're assholes, and you see kind of like people who you thought maybe weren't really that close to you actually really cared about you the whole time.
Let
Like
me ask you a question,
Chisaki, the photographer girl,
right?
he realizes like that person's like actually my friend, even though maybe we didn't hang out all the time.
Right, right, right. Now, how do you put yourself in the mindset to go from a silent discovery, Heart of the Machine, which is for a more mature audience, right? And to drift to, well, to make a story that's suitable, that dwells on teenagers. I mean, honestly, that's got to be hard to shift gears, adult, teenager, but you do it so seamlessly. You do it very
I
well.
think I loved before I read dark fiction, I loved YA novels. Like The
Oh,
Hunger Games
really?
was one of my favorite series. I
Right.
loved like the Giver series when I was younger. And that was kind of dark for
Yep.
a YA novel. And I wouldn't say The Soul Keeper's Assistant is a YA novel just because of some of the content in
Right.
there. It's definitely about young people, but I don't think it's marketed towards young people necessarily.
Well, it's got some mature content in it, but it seamlessly fits. You don't see it coming, you know, and then I guess you don't see it coming, and you don't see the resolution coming either. Once it starts, you think, "Oh my God, how to get in this situation?" Right? How'd Mia get in this situation? And you can't see any way out of it, right? So that's fascinating aspect of your work. I really enjoy your work, by the way.
Oh, well,
So,
thank you.
oh yes. So for all of you viewers today watching this video, I'd recommend you get, well, I'd recommend you get Tanya's first two novels, The Silent Discovery and Heart of the Machine. But I particularly recommend this work, The Soul Keeper's Assistant, because it's fabulously complex. It really is. It truly is. Because with a young adult novel, you don't expect this level of complexity, but you pull it off nicely. You pull it off nicely. So get The Soul Keeper's Assistant by author Tawnya Torres. Tawnya, would you like to interview next weekend, right?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, good. Good enough. I'll see you then.
All right.
All right,
Thank
bye.
you.
Bye. Stop recording.